Hi everybody, it's Paul here from Tribal Triathlete. How you doing? What I thought we'd do is go through a little bit of triathlon specific strength training for the next few weeks. But the first thing I'd like to do before we go into actual exercises is just explain what our progression is with strength training and exactly why you need to structure it like this. So our progression goes in a four-step process, and it starts with mobility and posture, progresses to stabilisation, and then to strength, and finally to power and elasticity. Now, why strength for triathletes? Isn't it an endurance event? Well, the reason we make sure we're strength training as a triathlete is because of this. Now, it's silly season here in London. We've got the London Marathon coming up on Sunday, and over last weekend I saw people doing their last runs, and I've never seen so much blue tape. Everyone's strapped up to the eyeballs. They're carrying injuries into the marathon. It's because everyone's just focused on gathering miles and their endurance, and then focused on the necessary conditioning to make themselves strong enough to be able to actually run 26.2 miles and actually complete the training as well. So what's the breakdown here? Well, actually, when you watch the marathon, if you're watching the London Marathon this Sunday, pay attention to what happens as the race goes on. Now, you'll see athletes start, and let's focus specifically on the elite athletes. You'll see the elite athletes start, and they'll look great at the beginning of the race. And then something happens towards the end of the race, and you'll hear the commentator comment on this. And it's basically when there becomes a divide in the race. So it might be that one person's going out in front of the rest of the field. Now, when that person goes out in front of the rest of the field and looks really comfortable and is in a flow, the commentator will definitely talk about their form and their ability to hold form and how relaxed they look. Whereas the people that are falling behind and not quite keeping with the pace, they'll talk about those guys tying up or losing their form or starting to look uncomfortable, starting to kind of develop different switches which only come into their running when their intensity is pushed to the absolute limit and they're not able to cope with it. So what's the ramification of that? Well, basically, all these guys have amazing endurance, but the strongest athletes are the ones that are able to keep going at that absolutely kind of like amazing speed of like 20k plus an hour. So it's really strength that leads to your ability to keep repeating the same movement over and over and over again, and that's exactly what endurance is. Actually, as a human being, you've got some pretty profound endurance already without having to really train it. You can train that a little bit through lifestyle, you can train it with your training, but essentially it's also the strength that's really important, because if you want to keep your form and if you want to continue to be efficient, it's really the strength that's going to get you there. So this is our progression, mobility and posture first, and the reason for that is because we're really maladaptive in a lot of our postures. Whether that's because we spend too much time on Facebook and kind of curled over our phones, whether it's because we're sitting at laptops all day, every day, or driving a desk, or driving a car, all those things. But also, when you swim, and especially when you bike, you really ruin your posture. So that's why we need to make sure the first step is to fix the poor postural adaptations you get from everyday life and from your sport. So that's what we're doing in mobility and posture. We're making sure that short, tight muscles are lengthened. We're making sure your perception of what good posture is, you notice I just stand up then as soon as I start talking about it. We're going to make sure you've got great perception of your posture. Secondly, we're going to concentrate on the small muscles that are around your joints to develop stabilisation. Now, we don't want to start introducing kind of big strength movements before you've got the stabilisation around the joint to make sure you're healthy. Once you've got that stabilisation, that's when you can think about really putting strength on top. And that strength can come in the form of kind of traditional strength training, or indeed like bodyweight strength training or kettlebell training, whatever that is. This can be all developed within this strength section. And then lastly, once you've developed a foundation of strength, then we can put power on top of that strength. And that power is also going to be elasticity, and that elasticity is what we really use when we're swimming, biking and running. So guys, we take a long game, but we take a very healthy approach to strength as well, and make sure you've got one stage progressing before you start the next. The last thing you want to do is, if you've never done any strength training before, is just start by introducing some power and elasticity training, because the fallout will be great, and actually you might not be dealing with the core problem that's causing your injuries in the first place. So set up your posture correctly, provide the mobility you need to be able to do that. Start to stabilize close to the joint and make sure you're looking after your ankles, knees, hips, spine and shoulders. Then provide the strength around that stabilization, and finally add the faster paced, elastic sort of work, like hopping and jumping and bits and pieces like that, to make sure you're really kind of carrying all this strength over into a sport specific scenario. Okay, hope that helps. And in the next videos, I'm going to be taking you through some specific exercises for mobility, stabilization and strength. Thanks a lot.